All right, so are you ready to go deep? Today we're diving into the world of pickup artistry.
Pickup artistry, that's right.
We're going to be cracking open how to be a pickup artist, a
Mhm.
practical guide.
Okay.
Wayne Elise, better known as Juggler to his followers and students. And we've got kind of a mix here.
Right.
We've got some audio clips and we've got some transcribed text from the guide itself.
Cool.
So we're really going to be getting into Juggler's world.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
This is one of those topics that can be a little bit controversial.
Oh, yeah.
But, we're here to unpack it all.
Yeah.
We're not here to tell you what to think.
Exactly.
We're just your guides on this journey into this very strange world.
That's right. And I think one thing that people might not realize is that this isn't just about like cheesy pickup lines or anything like that.
Not at all.
We're talking about a whole philosophy, a set of techniques, even some surprising psychological insights, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychology going on here. And the thing that I find fascinating is that it's not all BS.
Oh.
There are some things in here that actually make a lot of sense when you think about them.
Yeah, and even if you don't agree with everything or even anything that Juggler has to say,
Sure.
it's just, I think, fascinating to get inside the mind of somebody who's really thought this through
Absolutely. Yeah.
and put it into a system.
Exactly.
So let's jump into Juggler's core philosophy here.
Okay.
One of the first things that really jumps out is this idea of delaying romantic or sexual interest.
Yeah, he's big on that.
So he says, don't make those intentions obvious until a woman feels like she's earned your attention.
Right.
And I gotta say, my initial reaction to that was like, wait a minute, isn't
Yeah.
the whole point to show that you're interested?
Of course. Yeah, that's what we've always been told.
Right.
But Juggler has a very different approach.
So what's his reasoning there?
Well, he says that by holding back, you actually pique a woman's curiosity.
Oh, okay.
You create a sense of mystery,
Mhm.
and you make her work for your attention a little bit.
Interesting.
He even compares it to a poker game,
Oh.
where a woman's buy-in is her effort, her words, her creativity.
Gotcha.
So the more she invests in the interaction, the more she's drawn to it.
Oh, so it's like you're flipping the script on traditional dating advice.
Exactly.
Instead of showering her with compliments and attention right away,
Right.
you're creating a sense of scarcity.
It's all about scarcity and value.
So is that kind of like playing hard to get?
It is, in a way, but it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It's about understanding the psychology of desire.
Okay.
We tend to value things more when they're harder to obtain,
That makes sense.
when we have to work for them.
Yeah.
And by delaying gratification, you're essentially increasing your value in her eyes.
Okay. I mean, I can see the logic there, but how do you actually put that into practice? Like, what are some of the techniques that Juggler recommends?
Well, one that he emphasizes is something he calls the vacuum.
The vacuum.
Yeah, it might sound a little strange,
Okay.
but it basically involves asking open-ended questions and then staying silent.
Wait, so you just be quiet.
Yeah, just be quiet.
Okay.
And this is where the psychology gets really interesting, because most people are uncomfortable with silence.
Yeah.
So when you create that vacuum,
Uh-huh.
the other person feels compelled to fill it.
Oh, so you're not just waiting for her to talk.
Right.
You're actually creating a situation where she feels like she needs to talk.
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting. It's almost like reverse psychology.
It is a form of reverse psychology,
Yeah.
but it's also about creating a subtle power dynamic.
Okay.
Think about it. You're the one asking the questions.
Right.
You're in control.
Yeah.
And by remaining silent, you're putting the onus on her to keep the conversation going,
Interesting.
to prove that she's interesting.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all ties back into that philosophy of making her invest effort.
Right.
But I gotta say, this does seem a little bit manipulative.
Yeah. I can see how someone might see it that way.
Yeah.
And it's something to be mindful of.
Yeah.
The key is to use these techniques ethically, with genuine interest and respect for the other person.
So it's not about tricking someone into liking you.
No, not at all.
It's about creating a dynamic where they actually want to engage more fully in the interaction.
Exactly.
Okay.
And another technique that plays on this is something he calls flopsies.
Flopsies.
Yeah, basically,
So-
these are predictable behaviors that women might exhibit.
Okay.
For example, imagine a woman rushing across the street to meet her date.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a flopsy.
Okay.
It's an opportunity for you to initiate a conversation in a natural, seemingly spontaneous way.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
It's not about using some cheesy pickup line or anything.
Right.
It's about being observant and capitalizing on those everyday moments to connect.
great.
You know, this reminds me of something I read about nonverbal communication.
Oh, yeah.
Juggler talks about that a lot, right?
Absolutely.
Go.
He's big on projecting confidence and authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just about what you say, it's how you say it.
Right, body language, tone of
Yeah,
voice, all
exactly.
that. Yeah.
He also talks about the importance of genuine interest versus desperate interest.
Okay.
So instead of just focusing on a woman's looks,
Right.
you should try to find what's unique about her
Yeah.
and showcase that you're interested in her as a person.
So you're showing that you see her as an individual, not just some potential conquest.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he actually suggests some counterintuitive techniques for conveying that genuine interest,
Like what?
like downplaying your accomplishments or even highlighting your flaws.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
He calls it disqualifying yourself.
Okay.
It's a way of demonstrating nonchalance,
Okay.
showing that you're not desperate for approval.
Interesting. So it's like reverse psychology again.
Kinda. Yeah.
Okay.
By not trying to impress her, you actually make yourself more intriguing.
I guess it challenges her expectations
Okay,
because
then-
most guys are trying to, puff themselves up, serve the best possible version of themselves.
Exactly.
But by being a little vulnerable, a little self-deprecating,
Right.
you stand out from the crowd.
Exactly. And you come across as more authentic, more relatable.
Right.
And that authenticity shines through in your nonverbal communication as well.
Okay.
He talks about amplifying your expressions,
Okay.
using your body language to convey genuine enthusiasm and interest.
So it's like being an actor on stage.
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
It's about exaggerating your movements and expressions to connect with the audience.
So we've talked about delaying interest, creating vacuums, recognizing flopsies, disqualifying yourself.
Yeah.
This is like a whole new language of social interaction.
It is a whole new language.
But what about the actual like romantic or sexual aspect of all this?
Right.
How does Juggler approach that?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
And perhaps a little edgy.
All right, lay it on me.
He is a big proponent of creating a sexual vibe early on.
Cool.
He believes that most men make the mistake of trying to be nice guys, hoping that women will eventually realize how respectful they are and want to be with them.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that approach backfire.
Oh, yeah.
You end up in the dreaded friend zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he argues that this happens because men aren't clear about their sexual interest from the start.
Okay.
He believes you need to establish that sexual vibe early on
Okay.
to create a dynamic where attraction can flourish.
So it's not about being like crude or propositional or anything.
No.
It's about projecting a certain energy, a comfort with your own sexuality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He makes a very clear distinction between being sexual and being a sexual person.
Okay.
One is about being overt and potentially disrespectful.
Right.
The other is about being comfortable with yourself
Okay.
and expressing that comfort in a way that makes the other person feel at ease.
I'm starting to see the nuance here.
Yeah.
It's not about like hitting on someone right away.
No.
It's about setting the tone for a different kind of interaction.
Yeah.
But how do you actually do that without making the other person uncomfortable?
Well, he has some very specific techniques,
Okay.
and we'll get into those in a bit.
Right.
But one thing he emphasizes is the importance of timing.
Oh.
You don't want to reveal too much too soon.
Right.
Wait until the woman has invested some effort in the interaction.
Okay.
Then you can start to open up a bit and create a sense of reciprocation.
So it's all about building that connection gradually, layer by layer.
Exactly.
Like creating a slow burn.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And he also believes that physical touch can play a key role in this process.
Okay. Now, before we go any further,
Yeah.
he's not talking about anything inappropriate.
No.
Okay, good.
He's suggesting casual, non-invasive touches like a light hug or a touch on the arm.
Okay, so it's about breaking down those physical barriers in a subtle and respectful way.
Exactly. It's about creating a sense of familiarity and comfort,
Okay.
which can help to escalate the attraction.
This is fascinating stuff. It's like he's created a whole new playbook for social interaction.
It really has.
But before we get too deep into specific techniques, I think it's important to step back for a second
Okay.
and consider the bigger picture here.
Sure.
What are the potential benefits and drawbacks of this approach?
Right.
And is this something that everyone can or even should try?
Those are great questions.
Yeah,
And I think they're worth exploring in more detail.
absolutely.
So let's take a closer look at some of Juggler's specific techniques,
Okay.
analyze their effectiveness, and discuss the ethical considerations that come with this approach to dating.
Yeah, because I think there are some definite ethical gray areas here
Absolutely.
that we need to unpack.
We do.
All right, well, let's dive back in.
Let's do it. So, we talked about kind of Juggler's overall philosophy and some of those high-level ideas,
Kind of the big picture stuff.
but I think it's time to actually get into some of the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, let's get specific. I'm really curious to hear how some of these ideas actually play out in those like real world scenarios.
Absolutely. So one of the things that he emphasizes is creating a really strong first impression.
Okay.
He talks about how people decide whether or not they like you within a split second of meeting you.
Wow, a split second. That's not a lot of time.
No, it's not. And that's why he really stresses projecting confidence and authenticity from the get-go.
Okay.
He uses this great analogy, actually, about his cousin who worked for a traveling circus.
Okay.
And his job was to pound tent stakes into the ground.
Okay.
And at the beginning of the summer, it took him 20 strikes to get each stake secure.
Wow, 20. That's a lot.
It is a lot. But by the end of the summer, he could do it in just 3 strikes.
Wow, so what changed? Like he got stronger or something?
Well, he got stronger, but it was more about his confidence in his aim.
Mm.
You know, he could fully commit to each swing.
Oh, so it's not just about physical strength, it's about mental strength as well.
Exactly. And that's what he says applies to social interactions, too.
Yeah,
The more confident you are, the more relaxed you'll appear.
right.
The more genuine you'll be.
Makes sense.
And that makes you more attractive.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that feeling self-conscious in social situations.
Totally. And he offers some practical advice for that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing he talks about is focusing a woman's attention,
Okay.
especially in a really busy environment like a bar or a club.
Yeah.
He says, you know, when you approach a woman, her mind is racing with a million thoughts.
Oh, I can imagine.
Right. She's thinking about, you know, her friends, what she's going to drink,
Yeah.
you know, what's going on around her.
Yeah, you're just like one of a million things.
Exactly. So he says your job is to help her focus on you, on that interaction.
Okay.
You have to draw her in with your words, your expressions, your tone of voice.
So it's almost like you're creating this bubble
Yeah.
kind of a connection.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And he says if you lose her focus, don't try to force it.
Okay.
Go to where her focus is. Acknowledge her thoughts and feelings, and then gently redirect the conversation.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not about like fighting for her attention.
No.
It's about flowing with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about being adaptable and responsive to her energy.
Okay. I like that. Now let's talk about something that I know we touched on in the last part, but I think it's worth diving a little deeper into.
Sure.
This whole idea of being sexual versus being a sexual person.
Yeah, this is one of Juggler's really key ideas.
So can you remind us what the difference is?
Yeah, so being sexual is about being crude or propositional. It's about focusing on the physical without considering the emotional connection.
Right. Which can be very off-putting.
Very off-putting.
Yeah.
But being a sexual person is something else entirely.
Okay.
It's about projecting this comfortable, sensual energy that makes a woman feel at ease.
Really?
It's about being confident in your own skin
Yeah.
and expressing your sexuality in a way that feels natural and authentic.
Okay, so it's not about trying to get someone into bed. It's about creating an atmosphere where attraction can develop organically.
Exactly. And that's often what separates the guys who get stuck in the friend zone
Okay.
from the guys who are seen as potential romantic partners.
Interesting. So how do you actually project that sexual person vibe without being creepy or disrespectful?
Well, he suggests a few techniques. One is using subtle hints and gestures,
Like what?
like casually touching your arm or using chapstick in a way that draws attention to your lips.
Okay.
It's about introducing this element of playful flirtation
All right.
without being too overt.
So you're creating a subtext.
Exactly.
Okay.
And another technique he talks about is that disqualifying yourself thing,
Oh, yeah?
which can sound counterintuitive,
Uh-huh.
but it's about downplaying your accomplishments or highlighting flaws in a humorous way
Right.
to show you're not taking yourself too serious.
Right. It's like, I'm not perfect, and that's okay.
Exactly. Which can be really attractive.
Yeah.
Because it shows confidence.
And authenticity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it plays on that scarcity thing again.
Yeah.
By not trying too hard to impress her, you make yourself more desirable.
It's like that push-pull dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about rejection? Because that's something that everyone who dates has to deal with at some point.
Yeah, he talks about that a lot, actually.
So how does he suggest handling it?
Well, he says that rejection is inevitable
Right.
and that you shouldn't take it personally.
Easier said than done?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But he offers some good advice for reframing your mindset.
Okay.
He says that rejection isn't a reflection of your worth as a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply a mismatch of energies or preferences.
Oh, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's not you, it's just the situation.
Exactly. And he encourages you to view rejection as an opportunity for growth and learning.
Okay.
So each time you get rejected,
Yeah.
you're getting closer to finding someone who's a good match for you.
So it's like you're refining your approach. with each interaction.
Exactly.
I like that. It's
Yeah.
a very positive way to look at rejection.
Yeah. And he also stresses the importance of having fun, enjoying the process.
Yeah.
If you're not having fun, it's going to show.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to make the whole experience less enjoyable for you and the woman you're interacting with.
It's like anything in life. If you're not enjoying it, what's the point?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it shouldn't feel like a chore.
Right.
It should be about connection and enjoyment.
Okay, so now that we've talked about some of these general principles, I'm curious to hear how Juggler suggests applying them to more specific scenarios, like, say, approaching a woman in a bookstore or a club.
Yeah, he actually gets into quite a bit of detail about that.
Okay, good. Because I think those are situations where people often feel the most awkward or unsure of themselves.
I agree. So let's dive into those examples and see what Juggler has to say.
All right, so let's dive into those specific scenarios you were talking about, like approaching a woman in a bookstore or a club.
Yeah. So in a bookstore, he suggests actually using the books themselves as conversation starters.
Okay, how do you mean?
Like you could ask for a recommendation, or you could comment on a book that she's browsing.
Oh, that's clever. It's a natural way to break the ice.
Right.
And you already know that you have something in common.
Exactly. And it shows that you're interested in more than just her looks.
Right, right. What about a club? That's a totally different environment.
It is. And in a club, he says to focus on her energy and match it.
So,
So if she's dancing energetically, then join in. But if
Uh.
she's standing off to the side looking a bit shy, then a more subdued approach might be better.
okay, so read the situation and adapt accordingly.
Exactly. You don't want to come on too strong in the wrong setting.
Right, that makes sense. Now, I know we've touched on this before, but I want to circle back to it because I think it's one of the most potentially controversial aspects of Juggler's approach,
Okay.
and that's the importance of touch.
Yeah, he's very big on touch.
He is, and I think some people might be hesitant about that,
Yeah, understandably so.
especially, in today's world.
Right.
But how does Juggler address that?
Well, he believes that touch is crucial for building attraction and connection. But he also emphasizes starting with subtle, non-invasive touches,
Like what?
like a light touch on the arm or the back.
Okay, so it's about gradually escalating that physical intimacy,
Exactly.
but always being respectful of her boundaries.
Right. And he has this whole technique called the touch progression,
Mm-hmm.
where you start with brief, casual touches
Okay.
and gradually increase the duration and the intimacy as the interaction progresses.
It's interesting how he breaks down these complex social interactions into these like step-by-step processes.
It's very systematic.
Yeah. Now, I think it's important to acknowledge that some people might find this whole approach manipulative,
Uh-huh.
even disrespectful.
Sure. And it's important to be aware of that potential for misuse.
Right.
The key is to use these techniques with good intentions and with respect for the other person.
So it's not about tricking someone into liking you.
No, not at all.
It's about using this knowledge to create a connection that's genuinely enjoyable for both people.
Exactly.
Now, I know another criticism that sometimes comes up with this kind of material is that this focus on game and techniques kind of takes the romance out of dating.
I could see that perspective for sure.
It can feel a little bit calculator.
Yeah, like you're following a script.
Right.
But I think it's possible to use these techniques while still being genuine and romantic.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about your intention, right?
Exactly. And it's about understanding the underlying principles of attraction and using them to your advantage.
So it's not about following a script. It's about using these techniques as a framework for creating those more authentic and fulfilling interactions.
That's a great way to put it. And also, it's important to remember that this is just one perspective on dating.
Right.
There are many other ways to meet people and build relationships.
Absolutely. It's about finding what works for you,
Exactly.
what aligns with your values and your goals.
I think as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the world of pickup artistry,
Yeah.
I'd like to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question.
Oh, can we...
How much of what Juggler teaches is about game? And how much is it about developing genuine social skills and emotional intelligence?
That's a really good question. And I think there's definitely some overlap between the two.
Oh, for sure.
Because being able to read social cues, understand nonverbal communication, connect with people on an emotional level,
Yeah.
those are all valuable skills.
In any area of life.
Exactly. Not just in dating.
Right.
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from this deep dive.
Maybe so.
Whether you agree with everything that Juggler says or not,
Uh,
I think his guide offers some valuable insights into human psychology
for sure.
and social dynamics.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, it's about understanding ourselves and others better.
I think you're right.
So there you have it, folks. our deep dive into the world of pickup artistry. Hopefully you learned a few things.
Yeah. Had some laughs along the way?
Maybe even challenge some of your assumptions about dating and relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As always, we encourage you to think critically about what you've heard and to apply this knowledge in a way that feels authentic and ethical to you.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep diving deep.
Say, yeah.